In a display of solidarity, the United States has announced plans to deploy multiple military vessels and aircraft closer to Israel. This move comes in response to the recent attack by Hamas, which is suspected to have been aimed at disrupting potential normalization of ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. On Saturday, Hamas militants wreaked havoc in Israeli towns, leading to one of the bloodiest days in decades. Subsequently, Israel retaliated with airstrikes in Gaza, resulting in reported casualties on both sides. The escalating violence threatens to spark a significant new conflict in the Middle East. CNN reported on Sunday that at least 3 Americans were among those killed. As per a U.S. memo, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in an earlier interview with CNN, acknowledged reports of American casualties and kidnappings and expressed the need to verify these details and figures. "We have reports that several Americans were killed. We're working overtime to verify that," he stated. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also announced that the United States would supply munitions to Israel, with security assistance commencing on Sunday. Fighter jets from the Pentagon will be deployed to the region as well. President Joe Biden assured Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that additional assistance for the Israeli Defense Forces was en route, with more to follow in the coming days. According to the White House statement after their conversation, Vice President Kamala Harris also held discussions with Israeli President Isaac Herzog. Austin revealed that he had ordered the movement of a carrier strike group, including the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier, closer to Israel in the eastern Mediterranean. "I have directed the movement of the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group to the eastern Mediterranean," he declared in his statement. Meanwhile, a small group of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered at Times Square in New York City and near the White House in Washington on Sunday, expressing their opposition to U.S. support for Israel. Some protesters held banners with slogans such as "End U.S. Aid" and "Resistance is not terrorism." New York Governor Kathy Hochul had previously condemned plans for such demonstrations, denouncing them as morally repugnant. The attack initiated by Hamas on Saturday marked the largest and deadliest incursion into Israel since Egypt and Syria launched a surprise assault 50 years ago during the Yom Kippur War in an attempt to regain lost territory, disrupting Saudi-Israeli relations. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken suggested that one possible motive behind the attack might be to disrupt efforts to bring Saudi Arabia and Israel closer, along with other countries interested in normalizing relations with Israel. Hamas had stated that the attack was a response to escalated Israeli actions against Palestinians in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Palestinians held in Israeli prisons. Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh had pointed to threats against Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque, the ongoing Israeli blockade of Gaza, and Israel's normalization efforts with other regional countries as reasons for the attack. Prime Minister Netanyahu had previously voiced optimism about achieving peace with Saudi Arabia, envisioning a potential transformation of the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, home to Islam's 2 holiest shrines, has consistently insisted on Palestinian statehood as a prerequisite for recognizing Israel, a stance opposed by many members of Netanyahu's nationalist religious coalition. Despite the recent attack, the United States maintains its support for Saudi-Israeli normalization efforts. "We think it would be in both countries' interests to continue to pursue this possibility," said U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner in an interview with Fox News Sunday. Fighting continues in Gaza. Blinken characterized the attack on Israel as a terrorist attack by a terrorist organization. He noted that while most of Israel experienced relative calm on Sunday, intense fighting continued in Gaza, an enclave blockaded by Israel. Gaza has seen weeks of protests by youth groups, driven by long-standing grievances related to the Israeli military occupation, the Palestinian national cause, and prolonged economic hardships. Blinken also mentioned that, as of yet, there was no evidence suggesting Iranian involvement in the recent attack on Israel. However, he acknowledged the long-standing ties between Iran and Hamas, which governs Gaza.